This happened several years ago. I was at 20 and in college. I was living with my two best friends. One of them was moving out so that she could move in with her boyfriend. I placed an ad looking for another roommate. That's how I met Erin. Before she moved in, she informed me that she was vegetarian, but she wouldn't have a problem if other roommates weren't. She moved into our apartment a month later. The next day, after she moved in, she cooked breakfast for us. I was surprised. We didn't ask her to, and by her own words, she wanted to do something nice. She had made pancakes, bacon strips and hash browns. I am deathly allergic to few things. So, I immediately asked her what was in the food, but I didn't mention my allergies. Huge mistake. She listed the ingredients and I didn't find anything I was allergic to. Edit. She told me it was regular bacon. Not that it was fake bacon or that it had soy. I start eating and everything tastes a little off. I try the bacon and definitely something is wrong. At this point, she does a ta-da and smugly told us I bet it tastes exactly like meat. I am freaking out now. I told her I am severely allergic to soy and asked her whether there was any soy. Now she is apologizing and says she didn't know and that she is sorry she lied and blah blah. I am experiencing an anaphylactic shock, throat closing up, dizzy, the works. My best friend freaks out and calls an ambulance. I had to stay in the hospital for 2 days. With the United States healthcare, the ambulance plus my hospital stay racked up a lot of money. Money that I didn't have. In the meantime, I also filed a complaint with the police. Food tampering is a felony. I had a lucky break. My best friend had filmed the breakfast to post it on Instagram and she got the whole thing in video. In the end, Erin had to plead guilty to some low degree of felony. She didn't get any jail time, but got community service. Once she was found guilty, I sued her for the hospital fees. I won that one too. I did all the legal things under the advice of my uncle's friend who is a lawyer. He said something about how it will be easy to sue if she had a guilty charge. I also did not have any contact with Erin during any of this under the advice of my lawyer. Erin's scholarship was cancelled and she had to drop out. She also went into debt paying medical fees. I saw her on Facebook few days ago and she is still down on her luck. I guess a felony charge makes it very hard, no matter how small the charge was. I know she is the idiot for lying about food. I want to know whether I am the idiot for everything I did after. Because bottom line is, I basically screwed a person's life because they put wrong ingredients on breakfast that they made only to do something nice. I feel like everyone's the idiot here. It does seem like she was trying to trick you into eating meat substitute, which is a rotten thing to do, but I also think it was your responsibility to ask, does this have soy or other substances to which you are allergic, explicitly, or to otherwise inform her or anyone else who prepares food you're going to eat that you have life-threatening allergies. Not the idiot. The reason that food tampering is considered a serious crime is because it can have precisely the kind of consequences you suffered. She absolutely needed to be responsible for your costs and face the proper legal consequences for her reckless act that literally endangered your life and could have killed you. And for what? In order to trick you into liking something vegetarian, not at all to do anything actually nice for you. She deliberately deceived you. You did the right thing, the things you needed to. You're the idiot big time. So, I immediately asked her what was in the food, but I didn't mention my allergies. Huge mistake. You admit it here yourself, it's your mistake. You didn't disclose your deathly allergies. It is your responsibility to inform anyone if you are severely allergic to any ingredient. I bet you anything she would have immediately told you what was in the food had you been responsible enough to tell her of your allergies. How you won these court cases is beyond me, and I feel deeply sorry for Erin. Background info. My sister has a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. In January 2018, she told my family that she was pregnant with a third. She was over the moon, and she found out a few weeks later that the baby was going to be a boy. She publicly announced when she was 12 weeks pregnant and miscarried in March at 14 weeks pregnant. She was devastated by the loss. We arranged a full funeral, and she buried the remains in a cemetery. The headstone has the baby's name and birth date, and she visits every week to put flowers on the grave. She joined a support group for parents who have lost a child. In the last year and a half, all family events and celebrations have incorporated a celebration of her son's life. We all visited the cemetery on his due date last September to commemorate him. At Thanksgiving and Christmas, she set aside a little plate of food for him at the table, and we visited the grave after dinner. She posts pictures on Facebook all the time of her 2 living children next to the grave and captions it "my 3 babies." His due date is coming up again this month, and she's already organizing a celebration at the cemetery for his 1st birthday. I've dutifully gone along to all the other events, but this time I told her I wasn't willing to go. I tried to be gentle, but I ended up telling her that I think she's clinging to her grief and it isn't healthy. She's incredibly angry at me. She's accusing me of invalidating her grief and that I never cared about her son anyway. She said that he's her child and part of the family and that she's incredibly hurt that I don't want to celebrate his life. She hasn't spoken to me since I told her I wasn't going. I don't know what to do. I care about her grief and I get that having a miscarriage is a truly devastating event. But I also don't want to spend the rest of my life having to pay homage to a dead child that was the size of an orange. I mean, at 14 weeks you don't even need a surgery, they'll just let you take a pill and miscarry at home. I don't want to have to go to a cemetery multiple times a year and listen to eulogies for a 14-week-old fetus for the rest of my life. I also think this focus on the dead sibling has to be unhealthy for her 2 living children. I'm not going to tell her how to parent, but I also feel that I'm doing them a disservice by continuing to enable this kind of behavior. I don't want every family celebration to be focused on their dead brother. She can do whatever she wants on the due date, but I don't want to play a part in it. Am I the idiot? I don't want to hurt my sister, but I'm getting really concerned about how she's grieving a year and a half later. Not the idiot. She's obviously intensely grieving, but it doesn't seem remotely healthy for all the reasons you mentioned. And I think you and your family continuing with the celebrations will just enable her. I find the birthday party especially concerning because he's not turning 1. He never will turn any age. Are the kids going to be obligated to have cemetery cake every year for the rest of their lives? As difficult as it is, I think you've done the right thing, and hopefully she can talk to someone and see that. No idiots here. This seems very unhealthy, and your sister is not the first person to do this. There was a post a few weeks ago about a man whose wife kept commemorating the birthday of their dead child. It seems she needs more than a support group to work through her grief. I get your point. He never really had a life per se, and at some point you have to stop pretending and do what's best for your living children. I hope your sister can let go someday. She's grieving, not an idiot. But you're also not an idiot in trying to get her to move forward. She clearly needs professional help because her behavior is not healthy or normal after losing a pregnancy. That's not to say that she is wrong to grieve. It's tough losing a baby, no matter how early in the pregnancy. But creating a whole ghost child dynamic with the plates of food and all that is too much. She's building a fantasy life that's already having a negative effect on her real life. My mom had me pretty late in life, so I really didn't grow up with my siblings. I guess she wasn't a good mom the first time around, very neurotic and controlling. I mean, I've heard some horror stories about her, but I love my mom. I had a baby girl 6 months ago and named her Kalia in honor of my mom, Leah. My older siblings were pissed. My brother kept making comments about that poor baby and why didn't I just name her Jezebel. His wife was annoyed about how she is automatically going to be the favorite, and my sister took it the worst. She got very mad at me, saying my mom doesn't deserve that and it isn't fair. Despite the weird dynamic with our mom, we do get along for the most part. They are always nice to Kalia, but they call her Kay or baby. I really don't like Kay, and I want her called Kalia. I brought it up nicely, and my brother said he can't say the word Leah without wanting to gag, and my sister said it makes her mad every time she says it. I said I'm sorry, but it is her name. They continue to call her Kay, which my mom has picked up on, and it hurts her, but most importantly it isn't her name. Kalia is her own person, and has nothing to do with whatever my mom did years ago. I finally told them, if they can't call her by her name, they can't be around her, so I won't be inviting them to my house or letting them have much of an aunt and uncle role. My brother said okay, but my sister got mad and said I'm being insensitive. You are the idiot for not recognizing the years of trauma that were apparently inflicted on your siblings and then playing dumb at why they're worked up over a name. Forcing people to either be constantly reminded of their bad parent and tormentor, or cutting them out of aunt and uncle duties is screwed. I get that you had a more favorable time with your mom. What about your siblings using a middle name as a compromise, or something? Everyone's the idiot here. You clearly don't care much for the sort of hardships your siblings went through with your mother before her grand reformation when she had you, so you sweeping it under the rug is a horrible thing to do. That being said, them taking it out on a child who has a similar name to their mother is a horrible thing to do as well, and awfully petty of them, but then I suspect that's more to do with underlying issues they may have had with you since you were born, but who can really say? Either way, this is all a mess, but you're entitled to protect your kid from the obvious unfavorable treatment she's getting from her aunt and uncle. You're the idiot. Your mom was abusive, and now you have the audacity to get upset with your siblings because they don't want to say a name after someone that abused them. You should have figured this out before naming her. As long as Kalia doesn't mind being called Kay, then it's fine. You don't get to force someone to say a name that's modeled after someone that abused them. Congrats on not being abused personally, but maybe be a little understanding of people less fortunate. I was on a considerably empty flight. It was a 4-seat row plane with 2 seats on each side. There was a family of 4 sitting near me, mom, dad, daughter and son, that moved around quite a bit as there were many available seats to move about in, and the kids, my guess girl was 8-9, boy told me he was 6, were for moving around, but for the most part behaving. After takeoff, I took out my switch to pass the time and caught the little boy's attention. He started asking questions, and I got the nod of approval from the dad, so I started showing him bot gamma play. We still had about an hour of flight time, so I figured, why not, I let them play Mario Party. I asked the dad, he was closest to me, if it would be alright if they played a game. He seemed happy with the idea until I handed one of the 2 controllers I had to his daughter. He said something to her in a different language I didn't understand, she fussed a little, and then handed me back the controller saying she can't play. It doesn't take much to put 2 and 2 together. I didn't want to defy her father's wishes or make a scene, but I couldn't help ask why she couldn't play, hoping I was wrong. Girls shouldn't play video games, his face and tone so matter-of-factly. He said this to me, a 27-year-old woman, and I admit I got upset, but I couldn't argue. I just told him that if she couldn't play, I wouldn't let his son play either. This is when things went really south. The son, of course, got upset and started to cry a bit. The dad started raising his voice at me, and the daughter was trying to assure me it was okay, even though she was clearly sad. The wife tried calming her husband and kids, but she wasn't getting anywhere. I collected my controller from the son, and it hurt to pull away, but it just wasn't fair. I hated upsetting him, but as a girl who was once also told video games were boy only, I wasn't comfortable with that rule applied to my system. We were near the back, so a flight attendant came around to check what was going on, and the dad went into a tirade about how I purposely dangled the video game in front of his kids, then changed my mind to be cruel. I couldn't really explain myself, I just said I couldn't let him play if the sister wasn't allowed to. The flight attendant just looked at the father and said I didn't have to share if I didn't want to since it was my system, and he started ranting in another language. I asked to move, and he said yes as it was fairly empty flight. I moved to the front, but at this point all the passengers had turned to look at us, the now 2 crying kids and the angry father. It'd been bothering me since it happened, and I'm wondering if I should have just let the boy play. It wasn't his fault his father set those rules, and I really tore me up having to pull the controller away from him. Am I the idiot for not finding a better solution? Or for offering in the first place? What should I have done? Not the idiot. A million times. You are amazing, a freaking hero, thank you for standing up against that idiot of a father. It was a tough day for both kids, but with time the girl will remember it as the day a stranger stood up for her, and the boy will remember it as the day he was not more entitled than his sister just because he was a boy. As a woman myself, I just can imagine life without video games. My heart breaks for that little girl, so unfortunate to have been born into that family. If that disgrace of a parent makes a storm over video games, imagine what else is on the line for her. I'm not sure how clear it was on the plane, but my understanding here is you asked if they could play, not just a boy. And that he'd say video games aren't for girls to the woman nice enough to share with his kids is icing on the cake. With any luck, all three of them see the horrible father as the bad guy in the story. Not the idiot. It was not an ideal ending to a less than ideal situation, but 1. It's your switch, so your rules. 2. He should want his kids to be treated equally. And 3. It takes a special kind of idiot to say a girl can't do something to a woman who's obviously doing that exact thing. And if I might add, in terms of diplomacy, appeasement is a short-term solution that only helps reinforce a long-term problem. I told my wife the story, and she thinks I'm the idiot for getting involved. I disagree. Yesterday I took my daughters, 9 and 7, to McDonald's. We grabbed a table in the play area next to a table of kids. The oldest was probably 16 with the youngest being 8-ish. They were eating Happy Meals and drinking shakes. After eating, my kids went to play and ended up in a game of tag with the kids next to us. The oldest was reading a book while her siblings played. Other kids joined in. One child, who looked about 10, tried playing. At first the other kids played with this child, but after a while it appeared that they were leaving him out. He would continue running after being tagged. When the other kids explained to him that he was it, he started screaming and running around them, flapping his arms like a bird. I called my oldest over to ask what was going on, and she told me they didn't want to play with him anymore because he wasn't following the rules. She also pointed out that he had taken off his socks and had climbed up the slide, blocking the other kids from getting away. While talking to my daughter, the mother of the child, being left out, marched up to the group of kids and asked who was in charge. It seemed to be a boy around 10 or 11. She asked him why he was leaving her child out. I could hear him telling her it was because her child wasn't following the rules, and also he was pushing some of the younger kids who were playing. She called him a bully and asked where his parents were. He said his parents weren't there, but his big sister was, and pointed at his oldest sibling at the table next to mine. The mother marched over, looked at the girl and said, "Well, you aren't old enough to supervise these children, so you have to leave." The girl replied, "My siblings aren't misbehaving. Your kid is, so no, we aren't leaving." The mother then left the play area and returned with a manager. The manager approached the girl and asked if she was 18, to which she responded she was not. The manager then told her that they had to leave, and the girl said, "That isn't fair. We're customers too, and it isn't us being bad. Her kid is the one being mean to the others." The manager replied, "All children in the play area must be accompanied by an adult. You are not an adult, so you have to eat outside the play area." This is where I stepped in. I stood up and said, "I'm a friend of the family, and these kids are under my supervision." I went on to explain that the kids were playing an all-inclusive game of tag, but the other child wasn't following the rules and made it not fun for everyone else. I also mentioned that he had taken off his socks, against the rules, and was blocking the slide as well as pushing some of the smaller children. The manager then returned to the mother. I couldn't hear their conversation, but the mother ended up leaving with her child shortly afterwards. So, am I the idiot for lying that I was the adult in charge? Not the idiot, but I agree with another commenter. It's not smart to take responsibility for kids who aren't yours. You don't know them, their behavior could have changed for the worse and ended up getting you into trouble. You should be careful with things like this. Assuming false responsibility means you may have some unforeseen consequences of that responsibility, and it can land you in trouble. For example, say one of the kids you are supervising pushes another kid and breaks his tooth, and mother of broken tooth kid now thinks you are responsible. I don't think you were lying. You were the adult in charge. You were sitting there supervising and observed what really went on. Ironically, the mom with the bully kid was not being responsible and was not even there. It's pretty obvious why her kid acts that way. I'm glad you stood up to her. There's nothing wrong with calling out wrongdoing and unfair treatment. Not the idiot.